Jeff Hunt. He's Bill Thorpe. It's Thursday.
Almost the weekend. Road suck.
They're very icy out there.
Yeah.
Goodness, we made an early morning trip to the airport this morning.
Oh, man.
You get out on the made ones, E470 and Pena, and they're all fine.
Yeah. Anything that's raised off the ground because it doesn't hold on to heat is going to be icy. Your neighborhood side streets are going to be just like driving over gravel. It's going to be real slick. So just be careful. It's going to be some unexpected slippage and slidage. Also, when you're turning corners, this is just a reminder from the Subaru in front of me that did almost a complete 180 this morning, going too fast around a curve. You may want to manage speed coming around the curves. Just saying.
I had a Subaru totally swing out across 4 lanes in front of us.
Wow.
Might have been the same one.
Could have been. Yes. Could have been. Not learning the lesson. Not at all.
All right. We've got a lot this hour. Blake's probably got some breaking news on this RNC DNC bomber from 2021. We'll get to that. We're going to be joined by Matt Lamb regarding CU Anschutz settling in this vaccine mandate, this COVID vaccine mandate, $10 million. We'll get the news on that coming up as well. So lots to talk about. Now it's time for the news.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. It is Thursday, 10 and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 40 today, but it is icy this morning. Use caution. Please use caution. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about the special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, I'm letting Jeff do the bomber story, and I'll move on to this one. Authorities asking for help locating a northern Colorado woman missing since Sunday. CBI issued a missing endangered alert for 20-year-old Kaylee Russell Wednesday. Russell was last seen around 6 o'clock Sunday night near the intersection of Highway 402 and I-25 near the Loveland-Johnstown Park and Ride. She was driving a 2016 black Volkswagen at the time. She went missing. Call 911 if you have info or the Evans Police Department. DJT accusing Governor Polis of blocking former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters from being transferred to federal custody. Peters is serving a 9-year state prison sentence for allowing an unauthorized person access to secure election equipment in 2020. A pair of train engineers are safe after a Union Pacific train went off the rails into the Gunnison River Tuesday night, where rescue crews worked against heavy snowfall to rescue the engineers who were unharmed.
The train itself derailed into the Gunnison River. It was a multi-agency response. 2 engineers were on board with no injuries reported, though it was very cold, so we did have a concern about hypothermia.
Molly Casey, Mesa County Sheriff's Office. The derailment was caused by a rock slide 10 miles south of Grand Junction. This morning, Navy Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley is expected to be grilled about multiple strikes on the Venezuelan drug boat on September 2nd. Hundreds of Border Patrol agents have descended on New Orleans as a part of a federal law enforcement operation. Federal agents rounded up groups of illegal immigrants across the city Wednesday, and agents stopped at locations where day laborers commonly gather. They're still counting the numbers of those detained. Small business owner Tucker Mendoza doesn't like it.
The concept is if you see them, blow the whistle. That's as simple as it is. Let everybody know that they're in your neighborhood, that they're in the vicinity.
Kind of sounds like the late, great Richard Simmons. Wait, let me hear that again.
The concept is if you see them, blow the whistle.
Yes.
That's as simple as it is. Let everybody know that they're in your neighborhood, that they're in the vicinity.
Let's go exercise. DJT rolling back fuel economy standards for American automakers Wednesday. 47 said he was lowering standards set by the Auto Pen administration that required passenger cars and light trucks to have a fuel efficiency of around 50 miles per gallon by 2031. DJT says the standards will only jack up the price of vehicles. Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian says he is optimistic about the holiday travel season despite losses during the Schumer shutdown. And Jeff and Billy will also talk about this later in the show, more about this. Candace responds to Turning Point USA, who finally responded to Candace.
And guess what? Turning Point has moved to formally respond to all the things that we have said. And after a very long diatribe in which they wildly misrepresent the public and global investigation of Charlie Kirk's assassination, they at long last issued a public invitation or a challenge. I'm not sure what it is, but I accept.
All right. Seeking the truth in Charlie's assassination. Nuggets in Indiana.
Murray off the screen, wanted to step back, and now steps back. Left that short, and it bounces in.
Jamal Murray on fire, 10 3-pointers last night. Team high 52 points. Nikola Jokic, 24, 13, and 8. 135-120 final. Nuggets 15-6. Broncos continue preparation for the Raiders on Sunday. NFL tonight. The Lions play host to the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. Both teams on the outside looking in. The Rockies have named Josh Burns their new general manager in charge of baseball operations. Burns spent 11 seasons with the Dodgers, 10 in Aurora, 11 in North Glen, and 10 in Denver. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to let you know, I don't know if you saw this, that, the Broncos are really, really, really working hard to prepare for the Raiders this weekend. In fact, I hear that late this afternoon, they have a scrimmage scheduled with the undefeated Northeast Denver Park Hill Falcons. They're raising money to head to the national championship, little Pop Warner team.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
they want to mimic what's going to happen on
Nice.
the field with the Raiders. So that's a scrimmage they've got later on this afternoon. It's a nice scout team opportunity for the kids. Yeah.
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 A lot of confidence in those Raiders.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
You,
Love you. Love you, Gabe. Hope you're listening. Love you so much. Okay, sorry. Back to you.
hey, those Falcons in Northeast Denver are very
They're
good,
tough.
by the way.
Yeah, they've got a good pass rush.
Yes, they do. And plenty of speed and plenty of talent out there.
And they're so short, they're hard to tackle.
Yes, absolutely. Very elusive. You're waking up with Jeff and Bill.
The job is already a cooker pressure. It's already incredibly
Tell me how they're shoving it down your throat.
Typical. You tried to change it up. Listen.
No, I didn't. I'm just trying to qualify the conversation.
And we had just had pancakes.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Be on the lookout for some limited visibility in areas of fog to get your day started. After the fog burns off, becoming mostly sunny, highs mid to upper 30s. Fair tonight, teens and 20s. Mostly to partly cloudy, upper 30s to near 40 on Friday, near the mid-20s Friday night. Mostly to partly cloudy Saturday. During the course of the day Saturday, there will be a chance of snow showers, as tonight, Friday, and Saturday, there will be snow in Colorado's mountains, with a few snow showers reaching the plains. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Here's the breaking news coming from NBC. Suspect arrested in January 2021 D.C. pipe bomb case. They do not have a name yet that has been released, but sources reporting, you remember they found bombs outside the Republican and Democrat National Party headquarters in D.C. on January 5th, 2021. From what it seems reported, it is not that lady from the FBI.
No, doesn't look
now,
like it.
we don't know if they are connected with the agencies yet, but this is breaking news. We're going to keep you updated. Stick with us through all of it. All right. CU Anschutz agreeing to pay $10 million in lawsuit over COVID vaccine mandate. What happened here? Well, to give us some insight, Matt Lamb, associate editor of the College Fix. Good morning, Matt. Thank you for taking time to join us.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me back on.
So let's talk the case itself, why this is important, and some of the details of the settlement.
So at CU Anschutz, the medical school denied basically all vaccine exemption requests categorically from Catholics, Buddhists, and Orthodox Christians. And so Thomas More Society sued. There was a ruling last year against the university, and now as part of the settlement, they're going to pay out $10 million in damages, tuition, and legal fees to settle this, and they're also going to change their policies. This became an issue because in 2020, 2021, when the vaccine came out, the COVID shot came out, people began requesting exemptions. I know many Catholics and other Christians have moral objections to the vaccine because of its connection to aborted fetal cell lines, as well as just other objections to being coerced to take a medicine, take a vaccine. However, apparently there's really no good attorneys over at the medical school because they just said no Catholics can get an exemption, which I think basically any first-year law student could tell you would get struck down by a court. But apparently no one over at the medical school understands basic First Amendment and religious freedom law.
Yeah, I want to understand this nuance, right? Because it wasn't just saying that, look, we're not going to allow exemptions, at least from your reporting, this is what I understood, and I could be wrong, but that it wasn't just like a blanket rule that said, hey, we're not going to allow exemptions. It seemed like they said, hey, you Catholics, yeah, you guys, you're definitely not going to get an exemption. So don't even bother trying. Is that essentially what happened?
That's exactly what happened. So there were evangelical Protestants who did receive exemptions. What the school determined based off apparently nothing specifically is that Catholics were motivated by their personal beliefs, not their religious beliefs.
Oh, do we get you back, Matt?
Sorry, a little interruption.
You cut off a second.
Yeah, they were motivated by their personal beliefs, not their religious beliefs, which as a Catholic is a bit silly because my religious beliefs are my personal beliefs. So I'm not sure why those two things are separated.
And definitely going to set you up because it seems like they're targeting a particular people of faith. And then there was an element in this where they essentially interrogated people, right? So if you wanted the exemption, well, how Catholic are you? Is it really a religious belief, or do you just not want to take this vaccination? And they essentially drug them through interrogations. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right. They said, well, have you taken any other vaccines? Did you take the flu vaccine? Of course, the problem with that is that people's beliefs can change. So perhaps someone didn't know that other vaccines were connected to aborted fetal cell lines. Perhaps as they looked more into their faith, they developed moral objections. So you can't say, well, 10 years ago when you were a college student and you took this vaccine, because people's beliefs change, they evolve, they learn more about their faith, they learn more about different ethical issues. This is very similar, by the way, to what happened with a lot of military service members, and I think it's happened elsewhere, where schools were trying to play sort of like a gotcha game, like you said, saying, well, wasn't Tylenol also tested on these cell lines? Did you ever taken Tylenol? That's very wrong. And also a point I make in my piece is that CU Anschutz, like a lot of other schools, they're very big into diversity, equity, and inclusion, and cultural competency and things like that. But apparently with their big DEI staff and their attorneys, as I mentioned, they didn't realize that some Catholics, and as well as Buddhists and Orthodox Christians, have problems with these vaccines. I mean, as I point out in my opinion piece of the College Fix, you could make a fairly reasonable policy that just says either if you have an exemption, if you have an objection, you're exempted, or you need a letter from your pastor, your minister, an elder at your church, that just affirms that people of your faith have reasons to object to the vaccine. But the school started with the premise, I think, that they were going to give out few exemptions and then worked backwards to create this illegal policy.
That's Matt Lamb. He's the associate editor of The College Fix. You can read his piece at thecollegefix.com, thecollegefix.com. Yeah, I'm intrigued by this because, look, this wasn't that long ago. We all remember it. And, Matt, you're not a moral philosopher, ethicist, within an educational setting, but the argument was people are going to die. Our hospitals are filled up. The morgues are filled up. You remember the New York governor coming up, and they had the count that went up every single day, the amount of people dying from COVID. What religious exemption do you have that would result in us having to die? You must take the COVID vaccination. Now, CU Anschutz no longer has a general COVID vaccination mandate in place for staff or students, and at this point, it seems to be relegated essentially to the elderly, those with underlying conditions. But back then it was, well, I don't care what your religious values are. You're going to kill me if you don't take the vaccination. Do you think they were right?
Well, no. And in fact, if they believed that the vaccine worked, they wouldn't be so concerned about people not taking it, because it would be a perfect situation. If you want to take it, it will protect you. If you don't want to take it, that's your calculated risk that you're free to take. I mean, I remember Dr. Anthony Fauci saying, no, it protects you. Well, no, you can't spread. No, if you take it, you can't spread it. Well, no, actually, you can spread it. Actually, you need a booster. And so, it was just part of the ongoing lies that I think pretty much began in March 2020 about COVID and the lockdowns and shots. And then let's not forget that in a lot of big cities like Chicago, they had vaccine passports where you had to show your papers that you had received the COVID shot if you wanted to eat a burger in a restaurant or you wanted to go to the movie theater. And so hopefully this is wrapping up a lot of the abuses from the past several years that came after COVID. I remember when they started locking things down, it was 2 weeks to slow the curve. Most people, as I remember, were generally okay with that, generally okay making that sacrifice. And I mean, I kind of feel like an idiot. I used to work for Turning Point. I had the big government sucks buttons, and I actually believed the government was telling the truth, and it would only take a couple weeks. So, mea culpa on me for believing that. But I'm glad this lawsuit is bringing some justice, at least to these people at the medical school.
What I find interesting is in the agreement, this is some of the actual words. The university will refrain from future inquisitions into the supposed legitimacy of students' and employees' religious beliefs, the society has said in an announcement. That's strong language.
Right. So the school should not be inquiring into a student's religious beliefs for these reasons. I mean, it's perfectly fine in some sort of academic setting to ask people to share their religious beliefs or their traditions. I mean, that's obviously fine, but it's really not the business of the university to, wonder is someone really Catholic? Are they really Buddhist? Are they really Lutheran? That's not, it's a public university. It's not like a private Christian university that is hiring and you have to pledge support for the school's particular doctrine or religious beliefs. It's not really the business anyways. And it's a bit shocking that no one at the university, or at least no one in leadership, stood up and said, we shouldn't be asking Catholics to prove that they're really Catholic, right? We shouldn't be asking Buddhists to prove that they're really Buddhists. I think we should take people at their word when they say what their religious beliefs are, unless we have really strong reason to doubt them.
That's Matt Lamb. He's the associate editor of The College Fix. He's got a piece that he wrote about the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical School agreeing to pay $10 million in a settlement after refusing COVID jab exemptions for Catholics. We have some text messages coming in, Matt. One saying, but hasn't Pope Francis and Catholics say you have a moral obligation to get vaccinated? So are they really Catholic if they're claiming a religious exemption for vaccinations?
So there was a statement from the Vatican, and what that statement also said is that no one should be coerced into taking the vaccine. So I've heard this argument before. This is why it's really important to not read just the first sentence of a document, but to read all of the sentences. And he pretty clearly said, I don't remember if it's him or one of his cardinals, but the Vatican, let's just say, said no one should be coerced to take the vaccine. Now, I've written about other Catholic universities like Notre Dame who ignored that part. They also just read the top line that fit with their view of what should happen. But he clearly said no one should be forced to take a vaccine. That it's just stated right. You can look up the Vatican document. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but you can look up, Vatican statement on vaccines and coercion.
That's Matt Lamb, associate editor for the College Fix. Now, I agree with you that, Anschutz should not have singled out certain religions, but there are some exemptions which I do kind of glance at with a little bit of a side eye. And I understand the issue with Catholics, and I'm a Catholic myself as far as how they were looking at developing the vax. But Novavax didn't use any of the fetal cell tissue in their development at all, yet people were still asking for exemptions. So the logic behind the idea that I'm going to refuse all of them, I somewhat question per se. But I got a question for you, Matt. Do you think that there is any greater onus on someone working in a medical situation to be vaccinated or not? Because the examples that were given earlier were things like restaurants. And that seems to be different than working or going to school in a medical facility. Does that carry with it any extra burden?
So I think for this group of people, I don't know that they were all necessarily frontline dealing with people in the emergency room, dealing with people with respiratory problems. Some of these were students. I think some were professors. So I do think that the medical school could have made an argument to temporarily reassign people who did not have the vaccine to other positions, that were not maybe necessarily as front-facing, if that's what you're saying. However, what we found out about the vaccine is that it actually didn't slow transmission. So someone who got vaccinated and someone who didn't, there actually isn't really a strong reason now to believe that the person who was vaccinated was less likely to spread COVID. In fact, one of the problems with some of these vaccines, as I'm learning, is, the benefit is that it makes the symptoms not as bad. The problem then is that you're actually less likely to know you have it. So someone who takes some of these vaccines may actually be more likely to spread the disease than someone who doesn't, who would recognize sooner that they're sick and call in from work. So there are always other ways they could have dealt with this. For example, testing doctors and nurses and other frontline workers. I see your point. I just think there was other ways they could have accommodated people who had these objections.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Contact tracing would have been a huge help, but our system for contact tracing is completely and totally broken. There were some countries inside the Asian Pacific Rim that were absolutely fantastic because they're built for it, and they understand the importance of contact tracing in breakouts like this, specifically because of proximity to China and some other issues there. Now, the other part that I want to kind of explore with this is the idea of the vaccine, because right there you talked a little bit about, someone that gets the vaccine may not know that they have it, but wouldn't that then reinforce all of the other rules people then push back against? Things like the social distancing, the wearing masks, the lockdown. Even if the people are vaxxed, if it doesn't, as you say, slow the spread, wouldn't that in fact reinforce the lockdown mandates, etc., rather than make an argument for relaxing them and saying they were not needed?
Well, the problem is that COVID for most people was no more dangerous than the flu. So there were very few people, I believe, it's been a while since I looked at these stats, but there were very few people under 18, for example, who died of COVID. Most of the people who died of COVID had 2 or more comorbidities, as I remember. And so if we were to follow that logic, then you would have to have social distancing and mask mandates, which it's questionable if masks work, even if you use them. Most people touch their mask. So Richard Levine, Biden's assistant HHS secretary, touched his mask during his hearing, which renders it useless because you've now contaminated it. But to follow that logic, then anytime there's a flu outbreak or pneumonia, you'd also have to have social distancing because you could argue that those could potentially harm people. The reality is we live in a world, people get sick. I think it's on people to be, responsible, and if they're coughing up a lung or have other symptoms, have a high fever, then certainly staying at home is recommended and getting better before you go out. I think what we've learned from the COVID lockdowns is that the government will use it as a pretense to place restrictions on people's freedom. So I think there's a responsibility element. If you're sick, don't go out. And then there's also a freedom element in that we live in a world where we need to go out, buy groceries, and go to restaurants. So we can't just restrict people because they won't take a vaccine.
Yeah, I think you hit something on the head there as far as why the social distancing and the stay-at-home didn't work is if you remember that first 2-week lockdown, they said go home and it's 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then we all went and stood next to each other at grocery stores because we had to stock up on our supplies. So we were really, 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 really bad at the lockdown thing. But I just, personally, Matt, I got a question for you. Do you think that the vaccine was a net positive or a net negative as far as preventing people from passing away or facing the more difficult challenges of COVID? Was it necessarily effective, in your opinion?
I am not a medical doctor, so I'm not really sure I'm the best person to comment on that. I do think the COVID, what I can say from a political standpoint is I think the vaccine mandates caused more distrust in vaccines overall and caused more people to question other vaccines. And that's up for debate if that's a good or bad thing, but I do think that how hard the officials were pushing the COVID shot did have a backlash. Who's the HHS secretary now? RFK Jr., right? So I think it's fairly strong proof that pushing the COVID shots did lead to backlash against other vaccines.
Yeah, and I think, too, you got to look at, as we come out of all that, what we learned was that once there is a, quote, consensus at the scientific level, they can push that as hard as they want. And we dealt with school lockdowns. We dealt with the social distancing, the mask mandates, the vax requirements. And if you questioned it, you were, if you remember Kyle Clark saying this, you're questioning the firefighter at your door trying to save your life. And I'm sitting there going, no, we question everything. That's part of the role of being a journalist. But this moral force that came was something that I have never experienced in my life around COVID. That if you didn't get the shot, if you didn't abide by the rules, you were not just disagreeing, you were morally wrong, a terrible person, an idiot at best, a murderer at worst. And you saw that type of force. And I think it has a lot of consequences. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I remember Biden was saying there was going to be a dark winter of illness or something like that. And I do think, again, this is from a political standpoint, not a medical standpoint, but I do think it did strongly divided people because the politicians, like you were saying, were out there saying you were a terrible person and you were going to kill grandma. Ironically, the only one who actually killed any grandmas was Andrew Cuomo with his nursing home policy, but that you're going to get everyone sick and that the unvaccinated are spreading all this illness. As I said earlier, people get sick, people get flu, people get pneumonia. Viruses go around. It's just part of if you want a theological, is it part of original sin? Is it part of a broken world? It's just part of living life. We have 300 million plus people that live in the country. and it's just what happened. So I do think it definitely, the lockdowns, the vaccines, they really divided people and caused a lot more problems than they were worth for the medical consequences if you did get COVID. And look, if you got COVID, some people did die from it. I mean, that's terrible. But was it worth throwing people out of jobs, shutting down the economy, destroying wealth? I just don't think so.
Yeah, I can agree with you based on how we really got divided. And I would also put on the table part of the reason of that division was an entire cottage industry based on junk science that popped up. Stuff like spike proteins, ivermectin, the like, that had absolutely almost zero efficacy as far as COVID. But you had people like, Pierre Corey going around telling people that if you take ivermectin, you wouldn't get COVID at all. However, he was taking ivermectin and got COVID. There's nothing backing up ivermectin or any of that research. But we had America's frontline doctors going all over the place, making all sorts of claims that were complete and totally bogus. So I think that was also a part of it, is that inside of that anti-vax group, there was a whole bunch of stuff there that turned out to be complete and total nonsense, and people paid the price for that.
But I think the equivalent problem would have been like, imagine somebody saying, if you don't take ivermectin, you're going to lose your job. If you don't take this, we're going to kick you out of school. Like the force was on one side. Like, yeah, Bill, you can criticize the science, but the force behind government was on the other side.
Well, I understand the force, but we talk about choices all the time. We have vaccine mandates for public schools. We've had those for years. There are vaccine mandates inside the military. There are vaccine mandates in certain work areas. We've had those for years. And I've heard over and over again in my lifetime that if you don't like the rules of the job or something changes, go get a new job. How many times, and we have Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary right now, saying, if you don't like the inflation in your state, pick up and move. It's the same argument that if you don't like the vaccine mandate at your job, go get a different job. That's the argument. The idea being you don't like the wages that are being paid, you don't like the health care that's being provided, go get a different job. That's always been the idea of the choice. And that I thought was interesting inside of the debate.
I'll give you the final word, Matt.
I think the difference, there's a couple differences. One is that these mandates were added after most people had started jobs. With public school vaccine mandates, I mean, unless you have robust school choice and you have tons and tons of options, your public school is really your only option. So I would say with the military, I mean, yeah, I think you have a stronger argument there. You can decide whether or not to join the military knowing there's mandates. But I think just to bring back to this specific story, these people got jobs in 2018 or 2019 or started school in 2018 or 2019. And then there was this new mandate for a new shot. So I think it's a little bit different because it was imposed on them after the fact. I mean, the just move, you could say, well, Chicago could do a vaccine passport because if you don't like it, just, sell your house, get a new job, and move to another state, which isn't always necessarily the easiest thing to do.
Matt Lamb, Associate Editor of The College Fix. Go to thecollegefix.com, thecollegefix.com. He's got a piece up there about the University of Colorado Med School agreeing to pay $10 million in a settlement after refusing COVID jab exemptions for Catholics. Matt, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you both for having me.
All right,
have a great day.
Here are the questions I got. So I posted about this yesterday on X, and the questions I got were, 10 million, this is just the start. There were people going, I want a lot more accountability. I mean, Joe Biden, for instance, had to preemptively pardon Anthony Fauci. So is there a reckoning that deserves to come as a result of some of these decisions? Jared Polis never paid a political price with regards to the lockdowns he implemented. Do you hold them accountable? Were they just trying to analyze the situation in the midst of the fog of war, for instance? We didn't know everything, so they're doing their very best. Or are they complicit in actual harm, and you'd like to see a lot more than just $10 million in a settlement? Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line, 720-819-5115. All right, let's talk the gun room. Love these guys. Wayne at the gun room in Lakewood, absolutely fantastic. Because, look, we all know there's some folks out there when it comes to guns that are real pros. Man, they can dive into every different caliber, sight, modification you can make. That is cool. I love that you can do that. I'm not one of them. So sometimes you walk into a gun shop, you feel a little intimidated. Not the gun room. They are happy to talk to you, help you expand your collection, and answer any questions that you may have. The gun room is the place for you. And ladies, with the holidays coming up, I'm going to make this really easy for you. If you've been wondering what to get your husband, dad, or outdoorsman in your life, a gift card to the gun room is a home run. Trust me on this one. So stop in, browse their selection of new and used firearms, or just ask a few questions. They love helping people, no matter what level. Even if you're brand new to the whole thing, you just know that guns go pew pew. And you want some advice, they're happy to help you there. If you have firearms you want to sell, they'll happily come alongside you and help you with that. So give them a call. They'll pick up the phone, 303-237-1300, 303-237-1300. It's the Gun Room in Lakewood. Check them out at denvergunroom.com, denvergunroom.com. Be sure to tell them Jeff sent you, and we'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
back to the Jeff and Bill Show. CU Anschutz agreeing to pay $10 million in lawsuit over COVID vaccine mandate. Basically, what happened was they didn't just say, well, we're not going to allow exemptions. But they basically said, oh, yeah, you Catholics, you're going to have to prove you're really Catholic. And to Matt's point, who joined us from the College Fix, no lawyer along that line was there to go, hold on, we can't be in the Inquisition business.
Yeah.
How Catholic are you? Have you ever taken Tylenol? Well, that was developed along aborted fetal lines.
Yeah.
This isn't real.
The thing for me is I thought it was really, really bad that they had singled out certain religions and just give a blanket refusal. That's not okay. And as Matt outlined, a first-year law student would be able to tell you that if you take this specific group and separate them from the rest and say you do not have access to why, that's a problem legally, especially when you're talking about a medical mandate, whatever the heck that might be for a specific population. So this, to me, I don't understand how this got past the first meeting at the Anschutz Center. I don't understand where the lawyers were or weren't inside the room. I can't believe that the very first time the Anschutz Medical Center issued this set of guidelines, one of their lawyers didn't get on the phone and go, hang on, this is going to put us in a bind. Someone's going to come back and sue us because we have designated specific groups, separated them from the rest, and holding them to different standards than everybody else. That's not going to fly in any way, shape, or form. This is a layup, as far as I'm concerned, for the plaintiffs. It's ridiculous. And he was absolutely right about this.
Love to hear from you. Give us a call. What do you think? Is this just the start of what should be a lot of payouts for violations, religious freedom violations, privacy violations, these mandates? Or, look, it's time to move on. We did some right things. We did some wrong things. We're all trying to figure out. And this country should just move on from the COVID stuff at this point. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. All right, folks, let's talk Gyrie's. Wife and I had a great experience at the Gyrie's location in Parker. They're all over Denver, GUIRYS.com. They have helped every single day, Bill. I wake up and I look at our wonderful blinds that they have installed in our house because I was the one that used to order the cheap blinds on the internet and then installed them myself. So they didn't look that good. They weren't that straight. And then they'd break and you'd have the blinds that were halfway down on one side, halfway up on the other side. Terrible. Gross. Well, we went to Gyrie's and we got to sit down with a personal, professional design consultant, and they showed us the incredible selection of Hunter Douglas custom blinds, shades, and shutters. Bill, I kid you not, I have a little remote control, sits on my wall, right by my door, and I press a button, and all my blinds go up.
That's crazy. That is ridiculous. Okay.
It is so cool, dude.
There's part of me that, again, you don't have neighbors that are around you, but there's part of me that if it was in my neighborhood, I would be waiting for the neighbors to get home, and I would go, bring them up. And then when they get out of the car, I'd go, and put it back down while I'm staring at them. And I would wait for every neighbor to come home.
There.
Yeah, just stand there. It's like they get home and they park, and then it go, it would reveal, and I'm standing there, and then I would just look at them and,
like
and go back
Bond,
down. Yes,
evil villain
exactly.
character. The blinds just go up.
I would play with it so often. My wife would have to hide the remote from me. I would play with it so often.
Their designers are the experts. They come directly to your house. They'll bring paint samples, blind samples. There's so many different types of blinds, by the way. And they'll bring lasers to measure everything to you. So you can get the same expert advice right in your own home. Do yourself a favor. Get started today. Visit Gyrie's.com to schedule your in-home consultation. That's GUIRYS.com, GUIRYS.com. Go see the great people at Gyrie's. You'll be sure to thank me. Bill, I think for our society to ever get as serious about the lockdowns and the vax and the numbers and the little tickers and Cuomo doing his daily press conferences ever again, Like, for it to reach that level, you would have to be like World War Z zombie type of thing. I think fevers, coughs, sickness, people aren't going to ever take any type of mandate request from the government ever at that level unless you saw people literally eating others in the street.
Yeah, and that, I think, is going to be, I think you're right, the long-term problem from what happened over 2020 is because already we are seeing people reject proven vaccines in terms of measles and polio and et cetera. And now we're having measles outbreaks and people are dying because of it. And that's a proven, solid vaccine that we've been taking for decades. But oh, well, now that we've got these brain worms inside of us, this is what's going to happen. And that is the problem. And I blame a lot of it on the communication systems inside of the government, both under the Trump administration and the Biden administration. How they communicated and talked about science was wrong because the American people fundamentally don't have a core understanding of some of the processes, and they were really bad at laying things out. And so that has really, really hurt it. And yeah, I agree with you that it would have to be the idea of zombie level apocalypse for us to look at anything like that again. And that could be to our detriment. It could, because there will probably be something else that will crop up. They've seen a couple of instances of types of bird flu that have crossed over into humans recently. They've got 2 cases that I read about in the last couple of weeks that are brand new. They've never seen this form of bird flu cross into humans before, and these two cases have it, and they're in different parts of the world. And so that's going to be a concern because you're always going to have zoonotic transfers, and that's going to be an issue going further. So we'll see what happens next time around.
Join the conversation by giving us a call at 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking CU Anschutz agreeing to pay $10 million in a lawsuit over COVID vaccine mandates. They didn't treat the Catholics and a few Buddhists, I think, very well. So they're paying up. And my question, part of what we're discussing is, would you take any of these mandates seriously ever again? Gabe texted in saying, unless we had a hemorrhaging fever outbreak, no. Don't believe the government. Believe your own eyes and your gut. Let's go to Joe in Littleton. Good morning, Joe. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah,
good morning. Good morning. I don't know if that Matt's still listening, but I hope he would be. This is a subject near and dear to my heart. I may have called you guys before on this quite a while ago when all this COVID stuff was coming about. But I have a son that's like in his 50s, so he was trying the testosterone medicine over the counter. Well, he started getting these sores and on his legs, looked like shrapnel all over his body. Said, you need to go to the doctor. Well, they said it was vasculitis starting, and that means your vascular system is being attacked. Well, then he went to this company to work for. They must have had, 10 vaccines he's supposed to take. And I said, wait a minute. So I looked up those vaccines, and many of them have the same ingredient in them. And that can cause vasculitis. So they gave an exemption. But I just wanted to say this to warn people of what they put in their bodies. It was horrible. It was 6 months before he had complete healing of those on his body, and he still has scars all over his legs.
Joe, that's a powerful story and a good warning to all of us. Joe from Littleton, sure appreciate the call. We'll continue the conversation into the next hour. Plus, we'll talk Candace Owens and Turning Point. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.